Remember, if you go to today's Moodle page, here's our grouping notes. That's what I just passed out to you. You've also got the exercise files, and that's what you'll upload, and the Vectobot's Illustrator file. And when you open that up, it should be in Adobe Illustrator. When you're finished with this, I will have a place on this week's Moodle page to be able to upload that if y'all can log into Moodle. If not, you're up a creek. Okay, so here's what it looks like when you open up your Illustrator page. Your page is going to be nice and blank, so you really won't see what I've got here. This is my robot that I created. What you're going to do is you're going to build a robot out of these basic shapes. At least build the head using these shapes. So on your head, I want to make sure it has a head shape, an eyeball shape made up of one of these, a nose, mouth, ear, neck, antenna, and some sort of top to it. I will say, you can change these up however you want. Make them whatever color you want it to be, make it whatever size you want it to be. Go wild. This is kind of your time to be creative with that. Make sense? Once you've done a head, add on a body to it. I want to see arms, make a little body. You can add buttons, you can add switches, lights. You can bend things around. It doesn't have to be symmetrical, but build out the rest of your robot. And what I'm going to do is show you some things to think about when working with this. All of these are made up of the basic shapes that we were talking about last time. If you remember, you can go over to your toolbox, and all of your shapes are found right here. If I click and hold, it'll pop out, and if I select this last thing, this will pop out so I can see each and every one of these as well. Let's see, so let's go over here to our head shape and create this. Let's see how much y'all remember. If I wanted to use this particular shape, which shape tool do you think would come in handy? Y'all remember? Polygon tool. Obviously, it's not a square or rectangle. Polygon allows me to do this one. And with the polygon, I can click and drag. Now, right now, I've got 6 sides to the one I'm working on. How do I get it to be less sided? Arrow down. So I'm still holding down my mouse. Press my down arrow, and it removes the side that I'm working on. Also, remember, if you hold down your Shift key, it'll constrain your proportions. And I don't remember if I showed you this, but if I hold down my space bar, I can move my starting point around so I can use that. So with it selected, I've got my shape already created. To change the color of what I'm working on, look at the very bottom of your toolbox. You can double click on the fill color. That'll bring up my fill color picker, and I can make it whatever color that I need. And if I wanted to move it around, what's the difference between the black arrow and the white arrow selection? Selection and direct selection. What's the difference between those two?
The black arrow moves the entire shape.
Uh-huh.
And the white arrow moves like the specific point.
Bingo, exactly. With the black arrow, I can move my entire shape around. Also, notice I got my little bounding box, my white points. I can rotate it if necessary, or I can click on that and I can scale it down. All of this is what we did in our exercises, and I can move the whole shape. White arrow only lets me click on one individual point, and I can change that point to move that around as well. So once I've got it created, I can work with that. Let's look at the eyeball, because this is a little bit more complex shape. Now keep in mind, how many circles do you see here? 3?
2.
3 or 2. Okay, it's kind of a trick question because I got a stroke on one of them. Remember, if I make a circle, hold down your Shift key, that'll give you a perfect circle. Right now, I've just got a red circle with it, which could be the inside color here. If I wanted to, I can give it an outer stroke, an outer color, by double-clicking on this color swatch. And let's give it something noticeable. We'll give it a dark blue. When I say OK, it's very, very thin right now. It's 1 point. At the very top, here's where I can change the size. The stroke, either hitting the up arrow, or I can type in or choose a pre-made one as well. So there's one circle. Obviously, the other one would be a smaller circle inside of it. I can click and drag. If I wanted to get rid of my stroke, how do we get rid of that? Bingo, square with a line through it. So if I don't want that to be there, we'll get rid of that. Obviously, that's red on top of red, so I'm going to double-click my fill color, and we'll make it something lighter to give it a little highlight with that. Pretty cool? Okay. Here's the next thing that I wanted to show you that goes along with your notes that you created. I've got 2 different objects here. So naturally, if I click on one, I can move it around. If I click on the other, I can move it around. If I wanted to select both of them, I can either click outside and drag over it, just like this. Now notice that both of these are selected, and I can move both around at the same time. Or, if I deselect it, click off, I can hold down my Shift key, and I can select that one and this one and add on to it as well. Here's a great keyboard shortcut. Instead of having to select both of them each time, I'd love to just click once and be able to move it around because it's already an eyeball. I want to recognize it as one object. So what we're going to do is we're going to group these objects together. First of all, I'm going to select both of them. So I've got the little one and the big one selected. I can go up to Object and down to Group. The keyboard shortcut is Command G for this one. Once they're grouped together, check out what happens if I try to click on one of them now. When I click on it, notice both of them are selected and both of them will move around at the same time. So grouping objects together allows me to quickly and easily make those objects. I can even transform them. So notice now that if I scale it down, they both scale at the same time. Let's go to Edit and undo that as well. Here's another great thing to know. If I wanted to quickly make a copy of my eyeball, I can always go to Edit and Copy, Edit and Paste. And then I've got my object pasted in the center of my document. In Photoshop, how did we quickly make a selection? Do you remember what we held down? We did it with the tree when you had to do that Selection City object and you had to quickly copy the tree. Oh, we got to go back over Photoshop now. Okay, here's the quick way of copying it. I've got my selection tool, your Option key. Check out my cursor. It's got a black arrow. If I hold down my Option key, I've got a double arrow with it. Now when I click and drag, I get a copy of it automatically made, and it's exactly the same as the other one. So there's two eyeballs that I can work with. Hey, I can even go back in. Let's scale these guys down, and we can place it on top of here. Let's change up this background so we can see it. Let's make him green. There we go. So he's rocking along. He's looking good. Let's add a nose to it. Remember, these noses are made up. They look complex, but they're made up of the simple shapes that we're working with. So with this one, that's just a simple rectangle with two polygons on top of it. So I'm going to click and drag. There's my rectangle.
Are you wanting us to do all of these, or do we pick one out?
One of each, yeah. You can do multiple noses if you want, but yeah, at least one eye, one nose, one mouth, one of each. You don't have to do all of them. So really you're just making each set of each one of those. Good question. Let's add a stroke to that guy. So I've got them selected, double click on my stroke. Make it a dark green, make it a little bit bigger too. Same way for my polygon, up arrow. Here's another kind of quick tip that you know. Let's say I wanted this to be a green inside, dark green inside and a light green on the outside. The opposite of what I have here. What I'd like to do is to swap up my fill and my stroke color. This is where that little arrow at the top, little curved arrow top right corner. If I click this, notice now it swaps the fill and the stroke with that one. So now I've got a dark green fill. And we'll get rid of that. We'll place that inside of there. If I wanted to make a copy of it, hold down Option, click and drag. Now I've got that selected too as well. We'll group them together, Object and Group. So now even when I click it once, it still works from there as well. Looks like a pig, you're right. I can take this, I can maybe, oops, rotate it off to the side a little bit, so adds a little character. Sometimes you can change the size of one. Now he looks a little more demented, that type of thing as well. Here's another thing to consider. Notice that both of these are grouped together. Well, let's say I wanted to edit just one of these particular little six-sided polygons. If you double-click on an object, watch what happens. I'm going to double-click on this one. Notice that everything kind of goes very gray. Several of y'all may have stumbled into this the other day. This is going into what's called isolation mode. Isolation mode allows me to not be able to click on anything else but the object that I clicked on. Now, even though they're grouped, I can move this around and I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on something else. So if I did want to maybe make those smaller or rotate them a little bit, I'm working in isolation mode by double clicking it to get to there. To get out of it, oh, by the way, if you look at the very top right corner, you can see now I'm working layer 1 in that group. To get out of it, I can simply double click and it brings me back to my normal working mode where I can select everything and work within it as well. Double clicking brings you into isolation mode. Let's see, let's do some other things, add one more thing to it. So we'll bring them down. Which mouth do y'all like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Very last one. Oh, that's too simple. Okay, we'll do it though. With this one, I'll show you another little technique. So this is essentially a circle inside of a circle. Let's grab our ellipse tool. I'll change my fill color. We'll make it dark blue. If I click and drag, I can hold down my space bar if I need to move it around, get it just right. If it's not right, remember you can always use your black arrow tool and make it the correct size to pull up from there. Here's another thing I can do. If I was to copy this, we'll do edit and copy, and I was to paste it again. Edit and paste. It's going to paste a copy of it really directly in the center of my screen that I'm working on. If I did that, I would have to move it over and then resize it and get it exactly the way I want to. What I want to do is I'd like to copy and paste this exactly in the same spot. As a matter of fact, I want to copy it so that it's behind what I'm working on. This is where your other paste methods can work in. So I've got it selected. When we do copy, you can paste either in front of whatever you're working on or in back, behind what we're working on. And so I'm going to do paste in back. It looks like nothing happened. However, I'm going to change the color of what I'm working on so you can see it. Let's make it red. Still looks like nothing happened. That's because it's behind the blue object that I'm working on. If I was to change the size of it, now it starts to appear and I can work within it. Pretty cool? So copying in front or behind is another quick and easy way of working on that. Let's select those, Command G to group, and then I can just scale it down, place it inside of here, and keep working from there. Okay, so he's rocking along. I can make the head. All the head has to be made up of is one of each one of these shapes that you're working on. Here's some other details that you can add to your face once you're working on it. Feel free to add as much detail as you want. I'm mainly looking for the fact that you can use these shapes and you can work within it. Check out his head. So his is obviously made up of a little 6-sided polygon, but I've added some darker areas and some lighter areas, some highlights and some shadows to it. Here's how I did that. So I'm going, oh, come on, I'll drag him off to the side. We'll make a copy of him. I've got his head selected. I'm going to do a copy, and in this case, I'm going to paste it right in front, right on top of it. And if I wanted to make a lighter area, well, let's choose a lighter color. So I can make it light red. I tend to like it be, let's do a yellow. So I've got that on the side of it. With my white arrow now, I can click on the individual points and just reposition them. So for instance, this one can be moved over here. This one, click on it, moved over here. Now I've got my little highlighted edge. Pretty cool? Do the same thing for your darker edge. Select your red, copy, paste in front. It's on top of it. Now I'll just change the color so that I can see what I'm working with. Make it darker. Watch what happens if I try to select that edge. Hey, what happened? What point did I really select? Selected the yellow point. Remember, the yellow is on top of the red that I'm working on. So how do we bring something to the front so I can select the red? Where do we go to do that? Say again? It's not in group. It's not a group thing. With this one, we can go to Object and Arrange. This is what we did with those coins. You can bring it to the front So now I've got my red points on the very front. Select those, and we'll just drag those to the front here as well. The main thing is be sure you know what you're selecting. So now it's got a little bit of edge to it. I can add my highlights, add my other points to it as well. For these arms, what do the arms look like they're made of? Circles. All they are different circles that I'm working with. More than circles, I made one of them, so let's make say a dark one. We can do copy and paste. From now on, I'm going to do copy as Command C, paste in front is Command F. So Command C, Command F, and then to give it this little highlight, we'll give it a shade there, and then I can drag in each of the edges. Now I've got a highlight that I'm working from there. Let's give it a little shadow edge to this side. Edit copy, Command C, Command F in the front. That one's already pretty dark, but we'll make it solid black. Remember, if you want to change up your curves, let's bring this guy to the front. You can click on your Bezier point, drag it to this side. Your little Bezier handle will move over to this area. Come on. There we go. Same way for this one. So now it's got kind of a shadowed edge to it. If it's off by a little bit, we can click on that curve and reposition it as well. All I did was I created 3 different versions, kind of a middle tone, or a light tone and a dark tone. Or, yeah. Grouped them together. Then I just made several copies of it. Of course, I made different colors of it as well. Once they're made, I can even group these together, object and group. So now when I click on one, they all move together. And I can keep on adding on to it. Pretty cool, very fancy. We'll send that to the back, so it's behind it. So that's how I made the arm movement, or the little arm structure. One of those was made, and I just made copies of it and rotated it into place from here. Keep in mind, even the little pinchers, those can be made up of basic shapes by themselves as well. So click and drag. And I can either move this one in, so there's that type of one. White arrow will allow you to move the individual points, making it easy as possible. And if I wanted to, I can add highlights, little shadows to those as well too. All cool? Y'all think you can do it? This is what we're working on. Looking for details, I'm looking for, first thing is a head. Give it any color that you want, any color scheme that you can work with. Next, add arms, legs, or wheels, buttons, claws, hands, dials, those types of things. When you're finished, we're going to go to File, and you can save as. You can give it your name at the top, and we'll save mine to the desktop. You're going to save it as an Illustrator file. When you hit save, the next thing that's going to come up is your Illustrator options. For the most part, you're just going to say OK to this. If you are working on this on your own and you have a newer version of Illustrator, here's where you can save it down as an older version. I can't. So for instance, if you have Creative Cloud, I can't open a Creative Cloud account. But you can save it as, for instance, CS4, CS5, I have CS6 from here as well. And say OK. This is what you're going to upload to Moodle by the end of today. All cool? All right. I'm going to turn it over to y'all and let y'all get started.